It's hard to see everything because of the PowerPoint up.
All right, good morning, everyone. I'd like to start by recognizing that the CVRD is on the unceded territories of the Quw'utsun, Malahat, Subasat, Halalt, Penelakut, Semanis, Laxon, Pakachin, Dididot, and Patchadot nations, whose people have walked gently here for thousands of years. And with the quorum being present, I'd like to call this committee the whole meeting to order. It's kind of a weak one here. How's that? There we go.
Good gabbling.
So our first item of business here is approval of the agenda. We have a couple additional items. We have two pieces of correspondence under section 6. So these are letters of support with regards to the recommendation under R3. So one letter is from the Somnos Marsh Wildlife Society and the other is from the Quamachin Lake Neighborhood Association. So could I get a motion that we approve the agenda as amended? Moved by Director Segal, seconded by Director Abbott. Any discussion? No discussion, all in favor? And opposed? None opposed, motion carries. We'll now move on to the next item of business here, the adoption of the minutes. We have a recommendation. So I think that's my audio here. Give me one sec. There we go. We have a recommendation that the minutes from the committee of the whole meeting of November 27th, 2024 be adopted. Would someone like to move the recommendation? Moved by Director Justice, seconded by Director Kallio. Any discussion? No discussion, all in favor? And opposed? None opposed, motion carries. We'll now move on to public input period. So public input period is to offer the public an opportunity to comment on an agenda item before the committee considers the item. The public input period procedure policy allows for an allotment of 15 minutes where the speaker is welcome to comment on any items on the agenda up to a maximum of 3 minutes. This excludes items that are or have been the subject of a public hearing. Input from the community is valued and appreciated, and we request that input is presented in a friendly and respectful manner. Your cooperation maintaining a safe, respectful, and orderly environment is greatly appreciated. So I'll now turn to the gallery and ask if there are any members of the public who would like to address the committee. All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the next item of business here, delegations. I'd like to welcome Robin McLean from the CAWOP, otherwise known as the Cowichan Cooperative Marketplace, to present to the committee. Just a reminder that we allow a maximum of 10 minutes for the presentation, but do allow time after that for questions from the committee. Welcome.
Thank you. Hello. Thank you. Hello. So my name is Laura Boyd Close, and I've been involved with CAWOP since 2017. I'm a small grower, market gardener, and I was the secretary on the board of directors of CAWOP for 4 years, and recently I've been working as the community facilitator for CAWOP.
Hello, I'm Kyle Campbell. I'm the general manager of CAWOP, and I've worked for CAWOP for about 5 years.
Hi there, I'm Robin McLean, and I am fairly new to Cowichan Valley. I've worked in food systems for about 10 years, and one of the reasons I was drawn to this valley is because of the amazing food system here. So I'm also fairly new to working with CAWOP and happy to be here.
All right. So the Cowichan Valley Cooperative Marketplace was incorporated in 2014, and we are a nonprofit cooperative. We are a social enterprise, and we provide community services. We started at Cowichan Green Community as a project there, and we've grown into a sales and marketing service organization for sustainable local food businesses with over 90 members at the moment. We are producer-owned, and we are an engine for regenerative local economic development. So our mission is to improve the viability of on-farm livelihoods and thereby preserve farmland in the Cowichan Valley for food production. And we started, as I mentioned, at Cowichan Green Community out of a feasibility study there that was funded by the Ministry of Agriculture. And through a series of community consultations, the people running that feasibility study determined that farmers were looking for a solution when it came to sales. And cowop.ca is that solution. So we run an online marketplace at cowop.ca, and farmers harvest to order. So there's no food wasted. They don't have to stand at the farmer's market. They can connect directly with consumers through the online sales platform. And we can go to the next slide. These are some of our many members dropping their products off at our warehouse facility, which is currently at Providence Farm. And as I mentioned, we have 98 members currently. We've had over 170 producers since 2014, and these are just a few of them. CowOp is a crucial link in the local food supply chain, with a focus on serving these people, the growers and food processors, who are the backbone of Cowichan's farm and food sector. Some of these people are longtime members, and some of them are more recent entrants into the field. They're just starting out in their farming business, and we are there to support them. So our distribution service, home delivery as well as neighborhood pickup locations, is really important for our members, but it's also a convenient and sometimes crucial service for elderly or isolated island residents or anyone who wants to support local producers, benefit from fresh, nutritious foods, but can't make it to the farmer's market on a Saturday.
Okay, so in addition to the figures that you see here, CowOp plays a pivotal role in addressing some of the region's most pressing challenges in terms of local food and agriculture. We see CowOp as a support for the goals identified in the draft modernized official community plan, especially the goal to strengthen local food and agriculture and the goal to enhance regional prosperity. So one of the key challenges highlighted in the plan in terms of the goal around local food and agriculture is lack of connections and supply chains. So CowOp helps address that by connecting farmers and food businesses directly to consumers, providing shared resources, and offering a much lower markup compared to other retailers. So more of that money goes directly into the pockets of the businesses and the farmers themselves. So we also align with different objectives in the draft official community plan, such as FA22, which focuses on supporting the establishment of local food markets as key elements of the food system.
So this slide obviously shows it tells a pretty compelling story. In addition to the obvious bump in sales that we saw in 2020, this is showing exactly how much CowOp has put into the pockets of the local farmers and food processors over the past 7 years. During the pandemic restrictions in 2020, CowOp realized our role as an essential service and quickly adapted to massive sales volumes. We recruited an army of volunteers to implement home delivery for the first time, expanded staffing, infrastructure, marketing, etc. During this time, the board of directors voted to drop our sales margin to 15% for farmers to allow them to continue to have a direct sales outlet because the farmers markets were closed, of course. The fact that CowOp dropped margins heavily during the pandemic demonstrates our commitment to our goal of supporting the local food system by giving as much as possible to our producers. We've had some challenges in the past few years. Sorry, next slide. There we go. Yeah, we have had some challenges in the past few years, including a steady drop in overall revenue since 2020 of 30%, and a notably major drop in grant and donation revenue of 49%. So even with this large decrease in grant funding, we still managed to drastically decrease our operating deficit, and we did so by reducing our operating expenses and by raising our margins slightly. Consultants have told us that for grocery businesses to succeed, they need a minimum blended margin of 42%. And ours has moved up from just over 20% to the current 32%, but we have a mission to keep it as low as possible, to keep the majority of our income going to farmers and producers. With our margins so low, we do still have a small monthly operating deficit, and therefore we do still need some outside support to continue operating in service to these farming and local food businesses. Overall, even with this drop in revenue and grants, the business has stabilized, and we're now showing a small net profit for the first time in 2024, as opposed to net losses in the previous 4 years. We do look forward to a day that our service doesn't rely on sporadic or unreliable grants. For now, we do still rely on a modest amount of financial support from external services and sources.
This is a picture from my high tunnel where I was growing food. And this is just to show that small farms can produce an incredible amount of food in a small space, but it does require a lot of labor. And if we want to keep farmland in use for food production, farmers need to be supported in all the other aspects of running a business so they can focus on production. So that's what CowOp does. We provide marketing, sales, and distribution to small-scale producers in the valley. And it's an essential service for our community. We saw that during COVID. And we are so grateful to our partners at Cowichan and Green Community for allowing us the use of this reefer van. We share it with them. That's how we do most of our deliveries on a Thursday. And we are also grateful to the CVRD for funding the initial acquisition of this van. Thank you so much. It is amazing how much food is moved around this region in that one vehicle. And we share it with Cowichan and Green Community. They use it most days. We are pushing up against the limits of our capacity using this one vehicle and then cobbling together staff vehicles as well. So, you know, the lack of essential infrastructure is a challenge, kind of limiting our growth. So we are keeping our eyes out for opportunities to acquire our own delivery van. And in 2024, CowOp celebrated 10 years. We've been around for 10 years. We've been doing this work consistently. Every week, 51 weeks of the year, we provide a year-round food delivery service. So looking ahead to 2025, we are poised to make big strides. We're turning the corner on financial stability. And with just a few more customers or just one really supportive partnership, we will have the resources necessary to start looking at broader horizons. We're in a really exciting position to grow our impact and expand the network, collaborate with the South Island Farm Hub, for example, down in Saanich Peninsula. And we're just looking to kind of strengthen the local food system. That's really what we're about. I think that's the presentation. Thank you for listening. I'd really like to give out some of these booklets to anyone who's interested. This has a lot more information and some coupons if you haven't ordered on CowOp before. And we're here to answer questions.
Great, thank you for the presentation. I'll turn to the committee. Any questions? Director McGonigal, then Director Wilson.
More of a comment or anything, I'd just like to extend my thanks for extending the delivery to the West End. I know it's very well appreciated and utilized through our rural communities, which absolutely reduces our GHG emissions on people traveling, and only one vehicle instead of multiple. So many thanks for the service that you provided.
Director Wilson.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you very much for that. That's great. My mother had a green thumb. She could grow anything, anywhere. That wasn't passed down to me, unfortunately, so I'm a great admirer of anyone who can grow anything. So you do great work. Thank you for that. Can you, just a couple of questions here. You've got 66 members. Can you tell me what the largest and the smallest is, just so I got an idea of what the scale of the growing is? And it doesn't have to be exact.
Yeah, I can speak to that. I don't know for certain. Just off the top of my head, coming to mind, Lockwood Farms is one of our major farm producers.
Okay.
They sell a large variety of produce and as well as eggs throughout the year.
Okay.
Smaller members include, some coming to mind who are newer members, some that sell soap, some that sell dishcloths, some that sell, those are our non-farming producers, but there's a couple of farms on there that just sell, 8 dozen eggs a week, every week.
Okay, and it's not necessarily on ALR or anything like that, it's anywhere at all, right?
That's right. It could be just people's home.
And I think one more, if I could, please, Mr. Chair. Is there any kind of we know that things are expensive, and is there a rough comparison between what your farmers charge and what, let's say, a local supermarket, bearing in mind that the supermarket buys in bulk, you guys don't, I'm sure there is, but do you have a very rough idea of what the price differential might be, let's say for a pound of potatoes or something like that, or a kilo of potatoes? And again, it doesn't have to be exact.
So one of the unique aspects of COWOP is that all of our members set their own prices.
Okay.
And so there is quite a range on the site, and customers can choose from very, very cheap potatoes all the way up to premium organic potatoes priced as you would expect to find at Thrifty's, for example.
Okay.
So we do try to encourage our producers to go to the superstore and see what people are expecting to pay. But we also empower them to set their own prices, and that's one of the advantages for the producers.
Good.
Yes.
And you do great work. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the
Thank you.
questions.
Director Justice, Martman, and then Kalia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the presentation. You might not know this, but you might know it too, that the municipality of North Cowichan, which is part of this region, is in the process of beginning to develop an agriculture and food security strategic plan over the next year or 2 years or so on. So there's an advisory committee that meets quarterly. I was just thinking that you might be interested in participating, monitoring the unfolding process and having your input where you can. So that's one thing. But the second thing is a question. And so I think one of you mentioned that you actually moved to the valley because of the food system here, and your basic mission is described as strengthening the food system. So can you describe like what a food system is, what that means, and what's special at the Cowichan food system?
I think that's a Robin answer.
So I worked for quite a while in the Kamloops food system, and that's also quite a strong food system. And what's really unique about both areas is a lot of connections between the different food-based organizations, as well as growing infrastructure for processing, aggregation, distribution, and value-added services for farmers as well, which is processing. So those are the biggest things, and they're hard to grow. You might grow one area but not have the other areas quite up to the same level, so then it doesn't work the same way as an ecosystem. But I see Cowichan as being one of the farthest along regions that I've seen, or CVRD in general.
What is a food system?
What is a food system?
Big question.
Yeah, it is a big question. But I would say the ability for the different actors and infrastructure to act more as you'd expect an ecosystem to act, where there's all the different pieces can kind of function together. And a supply chain is a big piece of that. So being able to get your food from the grower to the eater in a way that's smooth and where everyone benefits.
All right, thank you so much.
Director Martman.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. Sorry I couldn't be there in person to see you. I had the pleasure of attending your 10th anniversary, and that was wonderful to be able to meet you in person, also to sit and rub elbows with other farmers. That was just wonderful. And also to see you as a community coming together to fundraise for yourselves, which I'd like to have you speak to in a second. But the other thing that was an eye-opener for me was what this does to a farmer in terms of being able to provide them access to a market. And maybe you can speak a little bit about how important that is. So 2 aspects of the things. How was your fundraiser? Second thing, how did the outcome of your fundraiser? And the second thing was, how important is this for the farmers?
Okay. Well, thank you, Director Martman, and thank you for joining us at the fundraiser. I also want to give a shout out because Director Martman donated a giant pumpkin to our fundraiser. It was huge, several hundred pounds, and we auctioned it off. It was a total surprise and it was a delight, so thank you. It was a lot of fun. And that event, we held that at Birdseye Cove. We sold out all the tickets. We've never done a fundraiser like that before. As a, again, we're a nonprofit organization. We're accustomed to writing grant applications, and we really hadn't explored other methods for fundraising before. But over the last couple of years, things have been difficult, very difficult financially. Kyle's been doing two people's jobs. We managed to lean up extraordinarily, and like that, we're turning the corner. But the fundraiser was necessary because we weren't getting the grants that we were applying for. We were relying on fairly significant grants from the province. One is called a job creation partnership with Work BC, and we had been successful in previous JCP funding applications, and then just no luck this year. So the fundraiser was an excellent event. It brought everyone together. We celebrated 10 years, and we ate some really good local food. And I think that we will probably start doing things like that more often. We're starting to explore other ways of we're trying to diversify our revenue, whether it's through donations and fundraising or different sales avenues. Having access to a delivery vehicle on more days of the week would allow us to expand our service as well and tap into different markets. So that kind of revenue diversification is really going to be an important strategic direction for us in 2025. It's speaking to the second question, the access to a sales outlet for small producers and especially farmers, I can't overstate how important it is, especially because this is an online service. It's very convenient for farmers to be out in the field and pull their phone up and pull up the app, type in what they've got available that week, 50 pounds of carrots, 60 pounds of potatoes, what have you. And the time, margins are already so small for a farmer. And I don't have to tell anyone in this room how farmers are going out of business. And we're losing farms at a devastating rate because it's very difficult to do business and make the business pay. I actually made the mistake one time of actually calculating my hourly wage as a small-scale market gardener, and it was cents. I was earning cents every hour. And there's only so much you can do before it doesn't make sense anymore unless you've got a big inheritance. And so COWOP provides the easy, quick guarantee of a sale that farmers really, really benefit from, and especially small up-and-coming farmers like I was when I first joined COWOP. So I hope that answered your question somewhat.
It does, and Chair, if I can ask one or make one other comment.
Go for it.
I find this organization to be really grassroots, but the one thing is I don't think they toot their own horn as much as they could, because at that fundraiser, the MP for our area presented them with a 10-year award from Parliament. And I think, that is a piece that we should celebrate. Certainly the federal government was celebrating. And I think we should find ways to do that for our local organizations that are so brilliant. Thank you.
I'll now move on to Director Kallio. And then Director Morrison and Director Staples.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of easy questions, and I'd just like to say that the great presentation, and you guys are doing great work. I'm just looking at your site online here right now, and one question I have to ask is the prices on here. Do they include the delivery cost, or is the delivery cost added on to that?
Yes, so we do charge a delivery fee. It's a $5 pick fee for an order and an additional $4.50 delivery fee. And so those fees are incurred on orders of under $150. So
everything over 150,
no fees
no
on top.
charge. Okay.
Yeah, and it's just the margins that are paying our bills after that. Yeah.
Okay, and how how far north, south, east, and west do you guys cover?
Yeah, good question. We used to, up until midpoint of 2023, deliver up to Nanaimo. We realized that there was just not enough marketing and customer base up there to justify a vehicle going up and down. So right now, about Cedar Road, just north of Ladysmith, we've drawn a little line there. And then southwise, it's sort of Malahat, South Shawnigan. And then we also do deliver out to Yubo, Honeymoon Bay, west.
Oh, okay.
So quite a large area.
It is. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Director Morrison?
Thank you, Chair, and yeah, big mistake calculating your salary on the basis of hours put in. Local government officials shouldn't do that either. Just really quickly, I don't want to have your time wasted here. You've come here, you've alluded to, a few more customers or a big benefactor or a partner. What kind of dollars are you talking about? Because it seems like you're talking, we aren't able to, on a regional basis, provide a grant like we did with the van that you're talking about at this point. It's a tight budget year, but individual electoral area directors have access, or most of us do, to grant aid. Have you got a dollar figure as to what you're looking for in the terms of a grant? I totally understand not-for-profits are really feeling the squeeze and are looking to every source that they can. And have you dreamed and looked at a new vehicle for your organization, and what would that cost?
Yeah, great question. So yes, we have lined up in the past some solid leads on vehicles that were going to be subsidized and make it easier to attain. Used vehicles with refrigeration run in the range of about 25 to 35,000. New vehicles up to triple that. Of course, funding for other avenues that we can explore are helpful as well. We're very limited with our marketing budget. Things like the van, infrastructure, marketing are things that we've had to lean down and limit any extra expenditures towards. So in terms of an actual dollar value, I mean, we're just barely making a net profit now. And with the reduction in grants from the average of 2020 to 23 being close to 80,000 in grants, we earned 17,000 in grants this year. So obviously anything in the range of 10 to 20,000 I think would really allow us to invest in a lot of other marketing as well as things that are easily attainable here. And I don't think that really covers the purchase of a new vehicle, obviously.
If I could just follow up, you might want to send a request letter to the electoral area directors and see whether or not there might be some support available to you through our community grants and aid. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Director Morrison. Director Staples?
Thank you, and yeah, thanks for all the work that you're doing. In one of my former lives, I used to, we had a farm-based business where we went out and delivered food to people throughout the region, and we were at about 120 boxes a week, and I remember a lot of long hours and not a lot of money, and doing things for a lot of love, of passion, of feeding people healthy food, but also growing healthy food and being able to find distribution outlets for that. So I really have always supported the work that you do. I think it's just important to the health of our communities, and farming is something that I struggle with the understanding of not investing more into it when it is something that is so important. And food security on Vancouver Island is at, it's so minimal, and it's something that we have to invest a lot more in, I think, just as a province. In terms of the grant funding changes, one of the things that perhaps the board could discuss is around looking at the job creation partnerships that were taken away from Work BC are really hitting people across the nonprofit industry, but it also is taking people away from building skills and finding employment, and it benefits so many different people in different ways in the community. But it is essential to a lot of nonprofits, and it's been around for, decades. I used to work for them when they were under the federal government, and there hasn't been an announcement of anything to replace that program yet. And any of those programs at Work BC were taken from Work BC. I'm hoping that with the new government that does happen, but that's perhaps something that we can consider talking about as a board, because it's impacting a lot of local nonprofits in the region, well, across the province now. It takes away a huge portion of it's not just grants, it's bodies, it's people to do the work, and it's skill building for people as well, and introducing them to areas that maybe they wouldn't be able to explore otherwise. So I think that that's something really important. And also writing to the federal government, for you just received an award for something that you can't fund. And to me, there's a certain level of insanity to that when you're being recognized for something, but the same government that's recognizing you is not supporting your work to continue. So there must be some avenue. Judy's great at all those types of things, some avenue to explore that perhaps we could, support in some way. So I just wanted to leave that, and thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thanks, Director Staples. Perhaps I could close right now just with a couple comments. One is, just want to recognize all the great work you've done as a cooperative. I think cooperatives have a long history in BC and the Cowichan Valley as an important model of economic development, very underappreciated. So it's great to see an example such as yourself that has had so much success. And I'm really hoping that here at the CVRD and at our individual municipalities, as we look at our efforts to support economic development, that we can put a greater emphasis on cooperatives and highlight great examples such as the one that you've been so successful with. I just want to build on Director Morrison's comment about the grants and aid. So the electoral areas do have some discretion in terms of grants that they can allocate to different community groups. The municipalities can do that as well. However, I know at North Cowichan we've passed our deadline by a couple months, so we don't have any funding available for 2025. I'm not sure about the other three municipalities if they still have intakes open. But perhaps something to consider for the following year. We usually have a deadline in October, and they're not big grants, but often cases it's a few thousand we allocate to community groups, especially if they align with some of our municipal objectives, and obviously with your support for local food production and food security, there'd probably be a pretty good fit there. But thanks again for the presentation, and you'll notice I'm hoarding a few of your brochures here, but we've got some online directors who are going to be in later this afternoon. I'm hoping to pass it along to them.
That's great. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll now move on to correspondence, and as was noted earlier, we have two letters that we received yesterday. So one is from the Somnos Marsh Wildlife Society, and another is from the Quamitchin Lake Neighborhood Association. Both are with regards to the report under R3 regarding the Drinking Water and Watershed Protection Program strategic partnerships. So I will turn to the corporate officer. I think these are just for information. We don't need a motion, correct? All right. So we'll now move on to reports. We have first the report from the Executive Office of the CEO regarding AVICC call for resolutions and advocacy to senior levels of government. Ms. Miles Wilson.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a very brief report in front of you, put forwards with much advance notice. We've received invitation to submit resolutions to the AVICC for their upcoming convention, which is in April of next year. And so first week of February, we're being asked to submit any resolutions to meet their deadline. The report was originally intended to go to the Electoral Area Services Committee, but as we were managing that agenda and the amount of business there, it was put forwards to this meeting as a first conversation. So you'll notice some mention in the report about it being presented there, but also kind of compiled to come here for a second conversation with the full committee. So just wanted to put that context out there. That's why the wording is as is. So just a quick summary within the report. It just provides a bit of a reminder at some of the advocacy items that are within your strategic plan to set the stage. There's some analysis about the work we did to advocate at the UBCM last year, where we met with a number of political officials on some of your advocacy issues. We didn't receive all the meetings we'd requested, but we took the ones that we were accepted and advanced those issues forwards. We've also done quite a lot of advocacy work in correspondence as directed by the board over the past year. So on issues such as legislative reform, drainage issues along highways, temporary emergency warming shelters, and a number of other issues. Staff have considered your strategic priorities and some of the issues that we have been working on over the past year. And within your report, there's also 2 proposed topics for resolutions that tie in the strategic objectives to what we're actually experiencing operationally as for challenges as well. So the 2 topics being on the subject of requesting support for enhancing First Nations participation in local government processes, as well as support and resourcing to advance active transportation initiatives within the region. So those are there for your consideration. Happy to assist you in coming up with other items you might want to advance to the ABICC.
Great, I'll turn to the committee. Any comments or questions? Director Nicholson?
There used to be a rule that you couldn't put forward something that had been put forward before. Is that still the case?
Sorry, could you say that again? I didn't hear it.
Well, when you're doing resolutions, there used to be a rule that you couldn't put forward resolutions, similar topics, but that had been done before. Is that still the case?
I think generally speaking, they won't accept something through either the ABICC or the UBCM if it's already been recently debated in its exact form. So, but you do see similar advocacy issues kind of come forwards year after year, or sometimes there'll be a gap year in a little bit of a different, slightly different topics. They just don't want to see the same issues over and over and over again. So. Sometimes similar themes do come up, though. Like it is, but you are correct in that you don't want to replicate the same issue over and over.
Although I think sometimes issues need to be replicated over and over because they don't get resolved.
I think if it's continuing to be an issue and something has not been addressed, then it would be, there's no harm in putting it forward. It's just whether it gets endorsed or not is another question. It's unlikely to get endorsed if it's the same case being made a second time.
So may I follow up?
Of course.
So I like the 2 that you've suggested here, but I do think we really need to follow up on the private managed forest land issue. And I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to develop something. I know you go to AVICC to get the other regions on board with what you're suggesting, but it would be nice to go to AVIC with a coalition of regional districts that have the same issues we do with private managed forest land. Yeah.
Hey, Director Nicholson, you read my mind. I was going to bring up the same point. Shocking. Hey, I wonder if one way to frame it is the province announced the review of the private managed forest land program in 2018, and then in 2019 they released the report on the public feedback, the What We Heard report. Nothing really has happened since then, and we have reached out. They've talked about this watershed security fund, which sounds interesting, but it doesn't really answer the concern that we've raised about this whole program review being on hold. What do you think of the idea of us having a resolution that just requests the province to complete that review that has essentially been on hold since 2019? Because one would think if they are going to complete the review, they're going to have to take into account the feedback received from communities, and we submitted our own as the CVRD, and then we also submitted a joint proposal with Cowichan Tribes and the other members of the Cowichan Watershed Board.
That's one approach.
Or open to other ideas.
Yeah, maybe we should talk about this offline, but I do think that we should put a placeholder for something like that. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, just to remind as well, so this was a topic that we brought to UBCM last year, as has been brought forwards many other years before. We weren't successful in receiving a meeting with the minister on this topic. We did meet with Parliamentary Secretary Green to talk about watershed issues related to private managed forest lands. But the message from the province is basically that you know, there was an election coming, new government, and kind of hang tight. So, you know, we didn't really advance much of a conversation on that topic. Yeah.
So in terms of a motion, I'll turn to the corporate officer and the CAO, but I wonder if we want to pass something like direct staff to prepare AVIC resolutions on the following topics: facilitating First Nations participation in local government planning and land use processes, support and resourcing for active transportation projects by the Ministry of Transportation and Transit, and addressing local communities' concerns with private managed forest lands.
Mr. Chair, we have materials prepared from last year, so we can take that as a kind of a starting point and then incorporate your direction here regarding the second phase of the review. So I think we can come back with something fairly easily based on the issues you wanted to advance last year, but we didn't have a receptive audience at the time.
So would that suggested motion work for direction for staff? All right. Moved by Director Segal, seconded by Director Estache. Any discussion?
Before you go there, please.
Yeah, Director Martman.
Had a hand up. Sorry, I just put my hand up just prior to that. There was some discussion we had also in the past around the 911 levy. I just made a note of it. I'm not sure I know the total issue behind it, but it's about regional district funding of it, and is it something that we should be going back to through AVICC on through the province, or is that more intended for a UBCM kind of?
Ms. Miles Wilson?
Yeah, it's something that province-wide, then it would be a UBCM item for sure, which we have more time to prepare for. But I made note of it, Director Martman. We'll follow up with staff about that item in particular, and then when we bring forth our additional items potentially for UBCM, we'll be ready to respond to that.
Would you be able to just quickly refresh the issue, or is that later?
I would like an opportunity to speak to staff about it, as it's been a bit of a gap in time before since we've last talked about it. If that works for you.
That's fine. Yep. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks. So we've got a motion on the floor, been moved and seconded. We ready for the question? I'll call the question. All in favor? And opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. We'll now move on to the next report, R2. So this is with regards to the Recycling and Waste Management Operations Department request for grant funding to support the reuse of the wash water, landscaping, and First Nations connections at Bings Creek Recycling Center. Any questions from the committee?
Move the recommendation.
Actually, before we move it, I'm going to turn the corporate officer wants to make one minor tweak.
Thank you, Chair. I had noted that they would like this to go up to today's to board meeting, so it would be that it be recommended to the board December 11th, 2024.
Would you like to move that one instead?
Absolutely.
Okay. With that amendment, seconded. Any discussion? Director Wilson?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Going to go to my notes here. On point number 3, that the remainder of the 2024 drinking water and watershed protection funding.
Oh, no, I think you're on the wrong.
Am I?
You're on the next item with the drinking water and watershed protection
I've done
fund.
that before. I'm sorry
okay.
about that. I'm jumping ahead here.
Mics. That's the problem. There's 2 mics.
So, any questions for staff regarding the report or the motion on the floor? Director Justice.
Yeah, thank you. If I'm in the right report, I do like the idea of the animated video sharing First Nations history, but I'd like to hear a little bit more about that, and I guess also what sort of staff resources would be used in producing something like that.
Through to you, Chair, to Director Justice. So the idea is that we would hire a First Nations videographer artist to make that video, and we would, just work with procurement to procure those services. We have our Indigenous liaison, Jared Quist-Dennison Williams, who's helping us to identify good potential candidates to help us with that video.
And what would the, if I may,
Mm-hmm.
what would the video be used for? Would it be on a loop at the Bings Creek Station?
Not exactly, but something we have found is in talking to elders about the site that Bings Creek is located at. There's so much history, and we don't want to lose that history and understanding of cultural values and how our site is connected to Swacas, Mount Provo in particular. So we asked the question, was like, we're learning all of these things, but how do we share it? So the idea is to capture that, make it a video. We haven't really figured out how we're going to distribute it, but it would definitely be available on our website. We're open for ideas of how to share it, but it's before some of them pass away, we want to be able to capture that knowledge.
Thank you.
Director Morrison.
Thank you, Chair, through the staff. So this is obviously needed. I'm thinking specifically around the tree canopy and our ability to ensure our staff have safe working conditions. I imagine the heat on that asphalt tarmac there must be incredible in the height of the summer. But I'm also contemplating the fact that we're looking at a review and repurposing of Bings Creek as a whole. So you're looking at doing a reuse of water, you're looking at canopy work and tree planting. Is this sort of short-term, got to get this done now? And clearly we're going to be planting trees hoping that they will grow up. Or are we at cross purposes in that we're planning and we could be changing things and maybe, not making the most effective use of the planting if we have to change, if we change the layout?
Thank you. Through to you, Mr. Chair, to Director Morrison. As it relates to this particular planting, we don't anticipate any changes of locations for the main site works. The planting would have to be very strategic, and to be honest, I don't know exactly how it would work, but what we're hoping to do is also to address, so as part of our development permit application with North Cowichan, we also need to do landscaping. So we're hoping to combine those two factors, get some extra funding to do some strategic planting of trees in locations that make sense, but also enhance the look and feel of the site at the same time, and provide safety in terms of cooling down the site.
Great, thank you. We ready for the question? So all in favor? And opposed, not opposed, motion carries. I've been asked to take a quick break before the next.
Point of order?
Yeah. Director Marma?
Were we voting on it? Were we voting on the amendment?
Well, yeah, I guess technically we didn't amend it. We just moved it again with that addition in terms of the.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
All right, we okay to take a quick 5 minutes? Make use. All right, we'll resume our committee of the whole meeting. Right now, we are at item R3. This is a report on the Environmental Service, from the Environmental Services Division on the Drinking Water and Watershed Protection Program Strategic Partnerships. I'll turn to the corporate officer to read out the recommendation, or does the committee want to hear from staff first to provide an overview? Okay, Mr. Moore, or perhaps an overview of the recommendation?
Yeah, through the chair, happy to provide a bit of background on this. So this is a report looking to for our Drinking Water and Watershed Partnership program, some potentials for the coming years for that. So under this policy for 2024, we've had successful partnerships with the Cowichan Watershed Board, the Shawnigan Basin Society, and the Partnership for Water Sustainability in BC. And there's still a significant amount, $58,000 remaining in that partnership funding for 2024. The existing partnerships, we entered into a 3-year partnership agreement with both Cowichan Tribes and the Partnership for Watershed Sustainability in BC, and a 1-year partnership with the Shawnigan Basin Society, just because we are still working at developing that relationship. The report that we're bringing forward today is with recommendations for two more partnerships. So extending the Shawnigan Basin Society partnership for another year and recommending expanding the dollar value of that from $10,000 to $15,000 for 2025, subject, of course, to 2025 budget approval. And the reason for that increase is they're looking to do a pilot project for some milfoil removal, and then continuing in the other work streams they've been doing with the water quality and watershed planning and forestry activities. The other partnership proposal that we're bringing forward is we were approached by the municipality of North Cowichan for support through the partnership program for some water quality issues in Somenos and Quamachin lakes. So this goes to the drinking water and the surface water quality monitoring strategy really relates to this, and that's where we're setting up a program to look at water quality, surface water quality across the region, and the initial focus on that has been on setting up long-term baseline monitoring sites across the region. And so we sort of look at maybe an upstream point and a downstream point and compare the water quality. And if there's a problem identified, then start to work upstream and find out more information. And then the other part of the surface water quality strategy is where a problem's identified is we look to go in with some short-term intensive monitoring to try to find out more about the causes and some solutions to the problem. So from that context, the issues that the municipality bring forth in Somenos and Quamachin Lake are some pretty clear indications of some significant water quality issues with phosphorus loading, and we've seen toxic blue-green algae blooms in there and nutrient loading, and there was a big fish die-off last summer where there was a number of the pumpkin seed sunfish were killed off, as well as some coho fry were in there as well. So North Cowichan has approached this with actually quite a significant proposal for funding for this, and we don't have funds available to support that within the program, but we do have some funds available. So staff took a look at the program, and to be honest, the request took me a little off guard at the start, but looking back at the drinking water and watershed protection policy that we do have, it speaks to partnerships to various organizations within the community, but also to partnerships with other levels of government. So it appears that this type of partnership was contemplated within the policy, and staff's recommending that we do move forward with a partnership with the municipality of North Cowichan. We're suggesting that we look at a 3-year partnership in the amount of $50,000, and we're also suggesting that since there are funds remaining in the 2024 budget, that we use those to support North Cowichan's request as well. So with that, the recommendations are there, and I suspect there'll be some good debate about the drinking water policy and partnership program. So happy to answer questions.
Thanks, Mr. Moore. I see there's some directors' hands up, but I understand you've made arrangements for Dave Conway from North Cowichan to be here to speak.
Yeah, I see
he's
Mr.
online
Conway
as
is online. He's not able to stay for an indefinite period of time, is my understanding.
So I'm just going to, Dave Conway is the director responsible for our environmental programs at North Cowichan, has been working on these two initiatives. I'm just going to turn to Mr. Conway to ask if he has anything to add to what Mr. Moore just presented to us. And then I'm going to turn to the directors for questions for staff. Mr. Conway, can you hear us? Okay, it doesn't sound like it, so we'll maybe come back to him if he if we can sort that out. So I'm going to go to Director Morrison, Director McGonigal, and then Director Wilson. Of course, you're the third with your hand up, so you're third in line. Director Morrison.
Thank you, Chair. And I've just heard Mr. Moore's remarks, and I'm troubled in that it's stated that there was anticipated that other orders of government would be partners in this initiative, and that runs contrary to the intent when the board passed the resolution to go to the public to have this approved. My understanding when we went out to the public with this, that we wanted to support and foster the watershed support groups and Cowichan Lake and River Stewards and the Shawnigan Basin Society. And I think through our actions by delisting some of the functions that we had in Shawnigan and others, that was the intent of this, this Drinking Water and Watershed Protection Fund. And I don't think it was ever intended, not in my mind at least, to be a partnership in other local governments within the regional district. Absolutely support Somenos and the other organizations that want to partner in this program. But I think that the community, when this was voted on and supported, didn't think for a minute that we would be talking about redirecting funds back to other local governments as participants and partners. I think if we're going to run a regional program, it should be run through the regional district, and I would gladly support partnering with the groups that we've received letters. But I think it's a dangerous, slippery slope to start entering into agreements with local governments in this when it was originally intended to support the small groups that are out there doing the great work on the ground and in the water. So can you further explain how staff came to this understanding that a partnership in the local government was something that was a viable solution?
Yeah, through the chair to Director Morrison, it's really looking at the partnership policy, and it speaks in several points within there the different ways that different levels of government can work together for this program. So that's really these potential partnerships are then brought to the board for direction in terms of your interpretation of whether this is in line with the policy.
Director McGonigal, then Director Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, if I may, I share some similar concerns on the partnership of these steward committees. I'm wondering, a couple of questions, if I may, through you, Chair. Are the current partnerships all administered through the CBRD? That'll be the first one.
Through the chair, yes. The three partnerships we have, we provide the funding directly to those organizations.
Is it an administrative capacity issue that this is being brought forward as an idea moving forward? Second question, and I will yield after that one.
No, in terms of a capacity issue, there's not a lot of difference in terms of what we need to be working with the partners. There'd be different levels of involvement with the work, but really what we're trying to do is to support the expertise that's held by our partners, where our goals are really in alignment with that. So with the Shawnigan Basin Society, they have considerable expertise in monitoring water quality, and they've done work on watershed planning in the area. So trying to support that, and similarly with North Cowichan, they have within their environmental department a tremendous amount of expertise on water quality issues and on the types of programs that need to be implemented. And they work very closely with the Somenos Marsh Society in the case of Somenos.
And if you could put me on the list for a second time, please, Chair.
Of course. Director Wilson.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I'm on the right page this time. I have the same concerns here as to the amount of money which is being allocated, with all due respect to North Cowichan, and not being allocated to the speciality groups, which has been acknowledged have a huge amount of background and expertise in these matters, especially on a local basis. I'm not in favour of for a start, the $8,000 extra going to the municipality of North Cowichan, considering that Area C in particular and the associated southern areas also have their share of water concerns. In my case, it's the protection of Aquifer 197. In the case of Director Nicholson, it's the protection of the Cox Isle watershed. Aquifer 197 is one of the largest and, in my opinion, the most vulnerable in the region. Quarterly monitoring of 197 is carried out at the test wells, but I have to chase publication of those results every quarter. And it's being done by a private thing. Eventually it gets posted, but I don't need that. I would much rather have somebody like the Shawnigan Basin Society looking at that on a regular basis. The Shawnigan Basin Society, I say again, they've demonstrated their expertise, they've demonstrated their commitment, and they are local and they are good. So this bit about, with all due respect to you, sir, North Cowichan getting all this money, no, can't go it. Thank you.
Ms. Miles-Wilson?
Yes, thanks. Thanks for sharing. It's good context for staff to have as well about this very important program for the region. I just wanted to make a few comments in that, so we have a partnerships policy, we also have a bylaw. And so the bylaw specifically speaks to the fact that entities who receive funding will be approved by the board. And so there was definitely through the bylaw and through the supporting partnerships policy, it is open. It's an open opportunity to partner with different entities, whether they be public, private. So that's the first point I wanted to just clarify. But the second point is about how we form partnerships. And so within the policy itself, it's a two-way street. We can approach entities to see whether they can accomplish the work that we have laid out in the plan, or it can go the other way where they approach us. And so I think what you're speaking to, Director Wilson, is about the fact that there's work out there that needs to get done. There's not an entity there that's coming forward. So there's more to be discussed potentially at a later date about how partnerships are formed. But I think when an entity approaches us, that our staff have done a good job of doing the analysis to find out, does this fit with the work plan that we have? Does it fit with the parameters of the program? And that's why the recommendation is what it is.
Yeah, and that's fair. I'm not criticising the work that the staff has done, not in any way, but I wasn't aware that the entity has to approach you in order for them to get the funding. That's one of the things?
Yeah, through the chair, there's two different ways that are spoken to, excuse me, in the partnership policy. So yeah, any organization can approach us with the funding. And then the other one is more speaking to us putting out a call for applications, which is a step that we haven't taken yet. That's part of the bigger development of the program and getting the technical oversight committee in place.
Okay, good. And Mr. Chair, I would like to make an amendment to this, and I'll choose, whenever you feel that's appropriate, I'd like to make an amendment to that particular.
Yeah, let's just maybe finish with the first round here, because nothing's actually been moved yet.
Yeah.
But before I continue with the speakers list, I've got Director Nicholson and Acton, but I do see Mr. Conway has popped up, and he may be able to provide a bit of context that may be able to answer some of the questions raised or that may be raised. I'm wondering, Mr. Conway, if you could also just elaborate a bit on the involvement of Cowichan tribes and both the work that is being done on the Sawmills watershed and the Quamachan watershed, which obviously include a lot of land in North Cowichan, but does include a lot of land on Cowichan tribes reserves, and obviously all of it is located on their traditional lands.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and happy to speak to this issue. I do apologize for being away from the screen when the report first came up, but the reason for approaching the CVRD, I think, is well understood, but although we are within the municipality of North Cowichan, we are part of the regional district and happen to be blessed with two very important bodies of water, Quamachan Lake and Sawmills Lake, important to the entire community and not just the municipality, not only for recreation, but cultural significance within the Cowichan tribes and other First Nations. And speaking to how the money is used, North Cowichan has developed a strong relationship with the Sawmills Marsh Wildlife Society, and funding goes through the municipality to that society for all manner of work related to water quality initiatives in Somno's watershed and around the lake, including significant testing, with a hope to ultimately being able to partnership, including the CVRD and First Nations, to improve water quality, not only in Somnos, but also Quamachin, hopefully to avoid things such as the fish kill that occurred late this summer. So with respect to the comment about partnerships with societies, this is in effect very similar to that idea of a partnership, although North Cowichan would maintain the management and oversight of that society that was ultimately the recipient of this funding. And with that, we are able to have those annual presentations, and to the director's comment about having to chase information. We're doing that, and we have that rapport with the society that gets us the information that is desirable and shareable quickly and without much difficulty through that society. And I respectfully ask that you reconsider your positions on this important issue. Thank you.
Mr. Conlon, can you just touch really briefly on your work with Cowichan Tribes with regards to the initiatives underway for both the Somnos and Quamachin watersheds?
Well, we work and have worked with Cowichan Tribes on providing information, and will continue to engage with members of Cowichan Tribes and their land group to ensure that the work that we plan and are doing is supported by them through the in the one case of Somnos Marsh, but the Somnos Marsh Management Committee, and the reports that have been adopted by local government. We are in the early stages of trying to and having engagement related to the proposals for Quamachin Lake that are coming up for aeration to ensure their support.
Wrong button. Back to the speakers list. I've got Director Nicholson and Director Acton.
Thank you. So, from my perspective, there is so much important work that we need to do to restore the damage we've done to our waterways, and to make sure we don't continue doing that in the future. So then I think, well, we've got a program, and we've done a lot of work at the beginning of the program to lay out a plan. And so I went and I looked at the plan, and one of the big, there's sort of three parts of it. There's the science, so collecting better information, and then there is taking that and using it to do better land use planning, because a lot of these issues are because we've done a lousy job in the past. And I really like the success looks like here. The last bullet, or second to last bullet, spatial distribution of regional growth reflects watershed carrying capacities. Like, we are so far from understanding that. So then, so what it leads me to think about is this a priority? I mean, is this a priority for $150,000 worth of the program? So over 3 years, $50,000 plus another 8. Is that a priority for us? And I can't tell from our plan because it's too general. You can fit anything in there. And so we haven't heard back on how we're doing with this program. It started in 2019, I guess. And I think there hasn't been a technical advisory committee established to provide advice on this program. It's lacking greatly, I think, on the question of Indigenous, working with Indigenous peoples. So, you know, at least we need to review the partnership policy and talk and think about what our priorities should be for partnering. and how we should be going about it, because I don't think actually calls for proposals is the right way to do this at all. And, like, this is about relationships and building. From my perspective, one of the most important things we can do is to really, really try to support collaborative governance, development of collaborative governance. So I'm okay with, a bit of money to North Cowichan to help them out, to get their program to restore those lakes, well established. But I'm not into locking into $50,000 a year forever, because that problem is going to be forever, Somenos and Quamachin. I mean, that's not an easy fix. So, I think we need to make sure that we do the work in 2025 to understand where the program's at, do more work around priorities setting and more work around partnering, and then we can have a conversation. So I would be willing to support like 1 year of funding of $50,000 while that work happens. That's where I'm at.
Thank you, Director Acton.
Thank you. Lots of good points. This is a really interesting conversation. And I have to agree with how this function started. It was my understanding as well that it would be stewardship groups, and we had examples of stewardship groups doing work for $2,000-$3,000, and the line item was $50,000 so that we could support water testing and everything. So I look at the strategic partnership policy, and number 5, I have a question on. Does that mean that any funds cannot be spent on staff time? And if that's the case, what kind of reporting back do people do with our money, with this money? And what kind of like auditing process is taken once we receive that information? Because if it's similar to what happens with our, what is the wording? Some kind of non-function grants or something where, so that the oversight is very little. So I would like to understand that a little better.
Mr. Moore?
Through the chair, I think that's an area of the policy that we could look at strengthening as well, is in terms of oversight. And generally what we've done is in the agreements, there's a responsibility on the terms of the partner to be reporting back at the end of the year on the work that's been done. With the funding, and we generally expect that the funding we're providing is kind of supporting, making the dollars go a lot farther than the money we're actually spending. We're supporting these groups, and then we're expecting that that's supporting volunteer efforts and really bringing a bigger impact from those groups, regardless of what type of group we're looking at.
Follow up, Director Acton?
Yeah, and a follow-up just on a little bit different. So I feel like there's just this underlying thing that doesn't feel comfortable about this whole conversation, is that members of North Cowichan are sitting at the table with us right now having this conversation. So I feel, it's challenging on what could we say, what should we say? And then, so I guess my question is kind of like, is there a conflict of interest? Because I've sat on other boards such as ICE-T, and when there was a conversation about grant funding to my community, I had to excuse myself. So my question is around conflict of interest. And okay, that's.
Yeah, I mean, perhaps staff plan on that.
Let's go back on the list.
I don't see how there's any conflict of interest in us voting on this. Perhaps staff have some insight on that. I mean, I've honestly have a struggle with that at the ICE-T as well when we do declare conflict of interest, because even directors at ICE-T, they don't have an actual pecuniary interest in funding decisions related to their communities. But we do vote on items regularly around this table that benefit our individual electoral areas or individual municipalities. Yeah, I'm gonna get used to that soon. They're like right beside each other. Wait, you don't have to.
Just the question, thank you for the question regarding the conflict. So as staff, we're just having a conversation here about the fact that there's a bit of a partnership on the other side, in that there's a stewardship group doing work, but there's also some work that the municipality is doing as well. So, we've put it here without flagging that, as it's still within the parameters of the program. But I mean, if you wanted us to come back, we can as well. That's as much as I can say at this point in time. Yeah, it's complicated.
Thank you. So I've got round two, so I've got Director Staples, then I'm going to turn, if there's any other first-time speakers, Director Stash, then I'll start with the second round. Director Staples.
Yeah, thank you. I think with the Couch and Green Committee's presentation about funding being harder to get for nonprofits that are, and in this case, societies that are doing this work, I'm just not sure why there's not direct flow through from the CVRD, from our fund, to those societies rather than going through North Cowichan. That doesn't actually make sense to me, because it is the societies that are, generating that work. So I would prefer to see something coming from those societies without the flow through, because all of us as municipal directors here have, waterways that we're responsible for. And so if there was a society doing work, let's just say in Macadam Park on restoration in the river, like the flow through would come through the city, or the society could apply for something from here. So I would see that as being the avenue, not this being the avenue. I think it starts to put us down a path that I don't know that we want to go down, because ultimately the work is falling on the societies, and then the partnership is with them and North Cowichan or whoever the municipality is. So that's sort of where I'm sitting on this right now.
So I think I can answer that. The reason why this is the proposal is because North Cowichan has a long-standing service agreement in place with the Summerless Marsh Wildlife Society. And there are established relationships between North Cowichan staff and the board and the staff at the Summerless Marsh Society. We could have another, agreement between the CVRD and the Summerless Marsh Society directly, but to me that would duplicate what's already in place and well established, again, between the municipality and the society.
So I appreciate that, and also the flow through then is going through the CVRD through North Cowichan to the society. So why wouldn't this North Cowichan to support the society to have the flow through if that partnership arrangement already exists? So I think that I would feel more comfortable with that.
Yeah, I'm not sure how the funding gets handed to that particular organization. But I'm not sure if it matters for the board though, like whether we send the check to.
It matters to me.
Okay, but I'm just not sure what the value. I mean, I'm not sure if I should be debating this right now.
So I'm not sure that we should be having this debate this way, because I think that that's a point of order. What I'm trying to speak to is the fact that through our agreement at the regional district table, it should be that we're working with those societies. Those societies having partnerships with municipalities is fantastic. That I appreciate the relationship. I think that it's really important and valuable. But if it's just a flow through, it shouldn't be flowing through North Cowichan or any other municipality. It should be flowing to the society. So it doesn't make any sense to me if North Cowichan's not taking that money for use at North Cowichan for staffing purposes, that it would actually go to the society, and then the partnership, however your partnership or any of our partnerships are with those organizations, are between the other local governments and those organizations. So to me, that is cleaner, and to me that supports the intent of this money.
Okay, I'll move on to Director Estache. Any other first-time
Thank you,
speakers after
Chair.
that?
I just listening to the conversation, I think we get in the way of ourselves a bit here when we're worried about imaginary boundaries when the ultimate goal is the lakes and the watershed. And then really, if you want to get down to it, people are concerned about this money being spent on the watershed. North Cowichan puts almost $250,000 per year into the watershed, and for watershed that's in our region, we're merely asking to have 50,000 flow back through to Summerless Marsh Society. So I think for equity in the area, I think we should have an unbiased view of looking at all the watersheds and I don't know what other programs, if you can provide any clarity of any watersheds in the CVRD that are getting significant support from this. North Cowichan unanimously voted to support Shawnigan Basin in last year when they came to the table, and we'll be doing the same because it's not about local governments or societies or groups, it's about watersheds and lakes. The money's, I don't care how the money gets there, it's going there and it's making a significant difference, and that's the end of the day. But just a friendly reminder that North Cowichan residents and the region supports $250,000 a year into this fund, and just asking for a little bit of support back into the watershed for equity for watershed protection.
Thank you. I'll now move on to more first-time speakers before I'm going back for the second round. So I've got Director Martman, Director Segal, and Director Abbott.
Thank you, Chair. And I'm on line with what Director Staples is saying, and I guess maybe I'll put my perspective on it because this policy came in place prior to my being elected, and I know Director Morrison speaks to perhaps more of the intent and the discussions being here before, maybe Director Acton as well. But the piece that strikes me is that we're all on the same page for this, that we all want protection of our drinking water, that the idea of leveraging community society support or work, volunteer work, is definitely the way we want to move forward, and if we can fund that, that's even better. It speaks to sustainability and long term. But the piece that I think I'm missing here is that the long term view of this, and I'm not speaking within our time of tenure, maybe 20 years, 30 years, 50 years thinking. The best way I see this is that we have this relationship between the CVRD and the groups. And anytime we funnel through any other political realm, as much as their intentions are today to have it this way, they're all going to face stresses. And so that's why I say the beauty of this really should be on a regional thinking basis. God, am I saying this? That we have to have that relationship directly. And we have to build it. And yes, you've got something special in North Cowichan. I really recognize that, and I encourage it. But I also think the long-term view is the CVRD has to have this not just for the Cowichan area, not just for the main area through North Cowichan there, but also from Malahat to Cassidy, Cedar, North Oyster. Anyways, that's how I view it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next speaker is Director Segal.
Thanks. I was just reflecting on the Shawnigan Basin Society and how that used to be funded just through Area B. But the work that they do is of regional significance, and so now it's being integrated into the DWWP. And I think, I really applaud the incredible, relationships that North Cowichan has with these societies, and I think the issues in Somenos Lake and Quamachin Lake are of regional significance, but we should direct that funding directly to the societies through the WWP.
Director Abbott.
Thank you, Chair. I don't share the notion that this should be handed off directly to the societies. I think our staff and our CAO have endorsed this recommendation, and perhaps there's time for this matter to be, unless it's budgetary nature, this matter perhaps needs more research, and we need to be better informed. But I also sense that the organizations ultimately participating haven't asked for this support directly. Director Staples thinks that we should send the money to those organizations. They have asked that we support the district municipality of North Cowichan. And finally, I think the municipality of North Cowichan seems to be gaining the expertise that we should get behind. I could be moved to adopt more along the lines of Director Nicholson's suggestion that year one, perhaps we endorse $50,000 with the idea of how to proceed in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Abbott. I'll first ask if there, oh, sorry, Director Justice, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. A question for staff. Do you know how this this drinking water and watershed protection would be handled by other regional governments in this respect? I mean, for example, in the CRD, and the reason I'm asking is that I know that the CRD also has a couple of lakes, bodies of water that have similar sorts of nutrient pollution levels and cyanobacteria blooms, Thetis Lake, Elk Lake, and Beaver Lake. And it's actually the CRD that's taking the lead on mitigative work on those lakes and not the municipalities within which those lakes sit. So what's the difference there? Why is it that I mean, it's because the board hasn't figured it out yet or supported it yet, but I mean, what's going on that the municipality of North Cowichan is taking responsibility for, or the lead in advocating for these lakes, whereas in the Capital District region, it's the regional government. Can you explain that policy difference at all?
Through the chair to Director Justice, I can try. I'm not totally familiar with the differences in the relationships between the municipalities and the regional district there. I know some of it might have to do with the regional parks and where you've got lakes within regional parks, they get some of the responsibilities there. And I think within within North Cowichan, it's largely just evolved historically that, before the DWWP existed, North Cowichan was already working on these issues and working with residents and with the Somenos Marsh Wildlife Society. So that's kind of what's already there in the policy context. And we're looking at how to bring that into a regional perspective.
Director Gallio.
Thank you, Chair. I've heard everything at this table here, and, like, one of the things is there's the fact that we're not being accused, but there's a thought that we're of a conflict of interest, which, I mean, we're partners at this table with everybody here, all the other areas. Like North Cowichan is part of the CVRD, and they're part of us, and, I think that you're kind of separating us out from being part of the CVRD, and we contributed a fair amount of cash to the CVRD, and I understand what you're saying. The money's flowing through us, but like the chair said, we have a history with the Somenos Marsh Wildlife Society, and we have a great partnership with them, and I think you're just using us as the entity that's transferring the money. I mean, I don't see there being, in my opinion anyway, that there's like a conflict of interest, or I think we're just picking threads out of the cloth, that's all.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Ms. Miles-Wilson.
I'll just address it directly regarding the conflict of interest, and that staff have considered the concern raised and don't see that there is a conflict, as the interest is in common to all members regarding watershed stewardship. So I just wanted to remove that from the conversation if possible.
Thank you. Any other first-time speakers? All right, Mr. Moore.
Through the chair, I think it might help just to address the request from North Cowichan was initially for $100,000 for Quamachin Lake, and that was both to support the monitoring efforts there and also to contribute to a reserve fund towards future solutions. And then the request was for $50,000 for Somenos, and one of the differences there is that for Somenos Lake, there's the Somenos Marsh Wildlife Society, which is very active and is doing the water testing work. But in Quamachin, there isn't that same community group present that's doing a lot of the work. So it falls to North Cowichan staff as well. So looking at since we don't have $150,000 available to meet that request, and we're suggesting 50, it's perhaps not clear in the resolution where that 50 would be directed. So if it would be directed just to Somenos or part to Quamachin, so if that's something that needs to be considered in the discussion. And just to reiterate, in the case of the Somenos Marsh Wildlife Society, it is precisely because of the existing relationship that's set up. And we were kind of envisioning that if only a portion of the funding was going towards Somenos, then they'd be essentially getting some of their funding from CVRD, some of it directly from North Cowichan, and then having to report out to both those entities on essentially the same work, and perhaps putting more burden on the volunteers that are trying to do the monitoring work rather than deal with the grant. So that's some of the context that we had behind that. And just a point that in terms of the partnerships, emphasizing that staff are already working with the Somenos Marsh Wildlife Society, going out, doing lake water sampling with them, participating in workshops to look at water quality issues on these lakes. So there's other ways we can try to build these partnerships too that aren't reliant entirely on the funding.
Great, thanks, Mr. Moran. If I could just build on your comments, I'll jump in right now before I go to the second round. But in terms of there being the two streams of funding here, as you noted with the Quamachin Lake, there is no community group that the funding could be transferred to. Historically, there was a Quamachin Lake Stewardship Society that did a lot of work in terms of raising awareness with the condition of Quamachin Lake and the need to address that. However, if you go back to about 2016, when we started seeing these blue-green algae blooms, or several dogs died as a result of the contamination. At that point, the issues just became too much for a volunteer society to handle, and at that point, the municipality became more active and has really taken the lead with it. We've built up an environmental department over the last few years to manage that. And the Quamachin Lake Stewardship Society still exists, but I mean, they've gone a bit dormant just because they had relied on a core group of volunteers who got older and got busy and weren't able to continue that. Just a bit about whether the intent of this fund was to go to local governments or community groups. I guess like the way I look at it is you've got people who are passionate about these watersheds in our community, whether it's Quamachin Lake, whether it's the Somenos watershed. They've been badly degraded over the last 150 years since European settlements started here, and they're working hard to try to protect and repair and restore these areas. And for me, like, I don't really see the importance of that distinction on whether or not those people who are doing that great work are employed by another local government, or if they're community volunteers, or if they're employed by a local society. They're all doing that work because they care about this community and restoring some critical natural spaces that, while they may be located in North Cowichan lands, and Cowichan Tribes lands, they are part of both important parts of that broader Cowichan watershed. I guess the last point I'd make here is, and I know my colleagues at North Cowichan have brought this up, but we have many of these regional functions here at the CVRD, and clearly a lot of them have real benefits I think we can all appreciate, no matter whether we're a municipality or electoral area, whether at the north, south, or west end of this broader region. With the Drinking Watershed and Watershed Protection Fund, I can see some real benefits that have come out of this since it was established, but I do hear often from folks in North Cowichan who don't see as much value as I would like them to see with it. I think many of those folks do recognize, say, the benefits of supporting the Cowichan Watershed Board and the great work that it's done, but perhaps they wouldn't see those same benefits for the great work that's being done in Shawnigan right now through the Basin Society. And my hope is that if we can offer up some of this funding for the restoration work in Quamachin and Somenos, that we could really highlight to a lot of those residents in North Cowichan they are the biggest contributor to this fund. We're all contributing, every single one of us around this table, but North Cowichan is the biggest contributor, and I'd love to be able to go back to my residents and say, like, hey, look at this great function that we've done at the CVRD, and look how it's benefiting these sensitive environmental areas in your backyard that you're so passionate about. And obviously, I mean, I'd love to see the 3 years of funding, but if that's a compromise that's going to make everybody feel more comfortable, then perhaps we want to consider that as an alternative to lock this in for 1 year and then to revisit it next year to see how well it works out. But I've got a second round here, so Director McGonigal, Director Wilson, Director Morrison, Director Staples, then Director Justice.
Thank you. And first of all, I just want to applaud and appreciate the tripartite agreement that is currently in effect with Somenos, Marsh Society, North Cowichan, and Cowichan Tribes. Great work. And just on the question of the perception of the regionality of this function and seeing the flow through to another municipal group maybe skews that perception of the regionality. I don't have a problem with accommodating. There's that microphone again. It's my hip. So I would be more comfortable with the flow through going through the society to North Cowichan in any manner that takes effect, just to take that perception of regionality out of the question. We all understand the important work not only of that organization, but other organizations who are working on water quality in all regions, whether it's Cowichan Lake River Stewardship Society, Somenos, Shawnigan Basin Society. But those are the flow-through groups that I think the intent of the function was established. And applauding the great work that is already done by North Cowichan and their Environmental Services Department. Excellent work. Let's see how we can go forward, accommodating, and perhaps look at a quartet partnership.
Next speaker is Director Wilson.
Thanks, Chair. I do enjoy a spirited discussion. And maybe I'm being a little bit parochial here, but one of the comments I heard just now kind of raised my hackles a little bit, where 50K was referred to as mere 50K. It's not mere 50K. There is no such thing as a mere amount of money. 50K is a huge amount of money. And we all have long-standing agreements. We all have history with local organizations. We do with the Shawnigan Basin Society. And there was in 2019, 2020, a group called the Cobble Hill Aquifer Interagency Task Group, CHAITG. It was huge. There were 20 people there, and there were all sorts of recommendations which came out of it. And you know what? We're still in the same position as we were 5 years ago. So anything that, is another organization where this is going to supposedly flow through, good luck with that. We should just, I do have a question, but what happened to CHID and their recommendations?
Point of order. I just think we have a technical situation happening.
It's Clayton here. I've sent a message too. I don't know what's going on here. Sorry. Yeah.
Clayton, you're
It
unmuted.
looks like something's happening.
Sorry, there was a point of order because of technical difficulties. We're just trying to fix that up right now.
And we heard that. I heard that.
Go. All right, Director Wilson, I think you were about to ask a question.
Yeah, I won't repeat everything else I said about being parochial and all the rest of it, but I don't see that as a bad thing. CHITG, do you know about that one and what happened to the recommendations that they came forward with?
Yeah, through the chair to Director Wilson. As far as I know, we're still getting monitoring reports from those wells, but beyond that, I'm not sure what the current status of that group is.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we are getting those, well, the monitoring reports are supposed to be done, and they are, but as I said before, it's a struggle to actually get those results for what I need here. And as far as upstream and downstream monitoring is concerned, and I will go back to Aquifer 197 all the time, it's one of the biggest, purest aquifers, feeds 17,000 people, which I will protect as much as possible. We don't have downstream monitoring on that. That's something else that I would like to see. And through the drinking water and watershed protection, that is where I would like to go. But do we have to do it through another organization?
Yeah, through the chair to Director Wilson, we're just in the process of finishing up the groundwater monitoring strategy, so we'll be bringing that to the committee in the new year once we've got that. So that will have a number of recommendations towards setting up our groundwater monitoring strategy. So we'll be looking to start implementing that.
Director Morrison, or Ms. Miles Wilson, then Director Morrison.
Sorry. As it pertains to partnerships, Mr. Chair, maybe it's a good time to offer this. So the recommendation in front of you is obviously related to the funding for the organizations as listed, but most of the conversation that we've been listening to here today is regarding partnerships, how we form them, who's eligible, and that type of thing. So one thing I wanted to offer to the committee is that we don't currently have an update to the partnership policy in the work plan, but if you're feeling like that is something that you'd like to see worked on, I'm hearing quite a few comments in that vein, that staff could consider that, and it could be something that we bring forwards next year. So if you want a bit of an outlet for some of these concerns, that would be a good place, is just to put forward a motion to have an update to the Drinking Water Watershed Protection Partnership Policy.
Thank you, Chair. I absolutely support number one. I can probably live with a one-year commitment of $50,000, given all we've heard. I'm going to raise a concern I have with item 3, the remainder, the surplus, the unallocated, whatever we want to call it. I know that for years, and we're right in the midst of budget right now, and that we have been told that we cannot consider current year surplus in the budget cycle, and this isn't being contemplated within budget, but I think that if we're told that for all of our other functions, we should not be either considering it for the reduction of requisition in the upcoming budget year, or we shouldn't be rushing out and spending it at the end of the current fiscal year. I'd like to see number 3 drop from the recommendation. I think that if there's an extra $8,000 that rolls into reserve, that would be appropriate. It would be consistent with the policy that finance has been drumming into us for a number of years. Thank you.
Director Morrison, I'm wondering if what you just said with regards to points 1 and 2, if you would want to move that to get something on the floor, because I know we're getting ready for round 2 here.
Just a point of clarification, though, because you said for 1 year, not, this does not say for 1 year, this says an annual contribution.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I mean with his suggested change of, it would be number 1 as is, and then at point 2, Director Morrison said for 1 year you were comfortable with, and I've heard that from a number of other directors as well.
Perhaps we could deal with item 1 first, and I would move item 1.
Okay, we'll get item 1 out of the way. Moved by Director Segal, seconded by Director Estache. Any discussion? We'll call the question. Don't they get the same treatment as, I'm just joking around. All right, we'll call the question. All in favor? And opposed? Motion carries. Number 2, Director Morrison, I'll come to you shortly after. Did you want to move that with the change to 1 year? Or we can keep going around in circles, but I wonder if we want some. Do you want to? Okay, I've got a speakers list, but could I yield to Director Nicholson to kind of get something on the floor just to kind of, Director Nicholson?
So I would move that the municipality of North Cowichan be established as a strategic partner for 2025 under the Drinking Water and Watershed Protection Program partnership policy with a contribution of $50,000, and that the partnership policy and approach in context of the overall strategic priorities be reviewed in 2025 to inform future partnering.
All right, move seconded. I'm just gonna check with Mr. Moore. So my mic wasn't on just there, so it's been moved and seconded. I noticed it says 24 to 2026, is 2025 fine for wording?
Yeah, if that's the will of the committee, that will provide 1 year of funding for 2025, and then, with the other partnerships that that will represent pretty much all of the funding that's available for 2025.
Great, thank you.
Point of order?
Okay, so, yeah, Director Martman? And then Director Acton?
It seems to me that we're voting on two separate resolutions.
Yeah,
in one.
I'll turn to Director Nicholson. Can we sever those?
Sure.
Yeah, okay, we'll deal with them separately, Director Martman. So I'll just turn to the corporate officer. Can we just sever it right now? Okay, yeah. So it's just voting on the 1 year of funding for the Salmanos and Quamachin. Director Acton, is it to that item or to the second part that we've severed? All right, so ready to call the question? I'll call the question, then all in favor? And opposed? Director Morrison opposed, motion carries. So we'll move on to the part that was severed, and Director Nicholson, could you read that out one more time?
So that would be to move that a review of the partnership policy and approach to partnering in context of the overall strategic priorities for the Drinking Water Watershed Protection Program be done to inform future partnering, and so that the timeline would be like next year, so we wouldn't have this discussion.
Okay,
Again.
I'm gonna go period right after you said future
Thank you.
partnering. All right, moved, seconded, to speak to it? Director Staples?
Yeah, so I supported the first motion only because of the second motion coming, so to me, they kind of should have been reversed, but I just want to state that, and I want North Cowichan members to understand that, and community members to understand this has nothing to do with the fact that this is North Cowichan bringing this. It wouldn't matter who it was bringing this to the table. I don't feel like this is how this fund was set up, and I don't feel like this is how it should be moved forward. It should be with exceptions to what was spoken around something like Quamachin Lake, where there is no other funding partner, right? That makes sense to me, but where there is another funding partner that's an organization, the flow through does not make sense. And that, I can just see that going terribly wrong in instances all across the region, and also the perception of it. That, so we're all contributing to this fund, and then we're all taking from this fund that's supposed to go to community members. So that is how it can be perceived by people, realistically. Regardless of whether or not it's Duncan or Lake Cowichan or Ladysmith, it doesn't matter. So I think that I just want to be really clear on that, and also too that every single person in this region contributes to this fund. So we have to stop talking about things like I don't know who the smallest contributor in financial dollars total is in the region. I'm not sure who it would be, but as an area, if they're only contributing $2,000 because of the population, we're never going to talk about them like they are contributing only $2,000 because they have the smallest population. Per person, per household, everyone is contributing. So it doesn't matter if the biggest check comes from North Cowichan because you've got the most people, or the smallest check comes from, Satlam because they have the least people. So I just really think that we should be respectful of that around this table when we're having these discussions, because these are regional functions that every household pays to. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Director Staples. So I've got Director Martman, Director Acton, and Director Justice. You were from the old list. Do you want to speak to this motion as well? All right. So, Director Martman?
Thank you, Chair. And the only question I have on the intent of this motion is whether the language is too restrictive, and whether we should have an enabling language to have a review of the policy. And maybe staff can speak to what they would do with this motion, given as it's worded.
Mr. Moore?
Could you read it back? My impression was that it was directing a review of the policy, but.
Yeah, I'll turn to the corporate officer. I'd like to read out the suggested motion.
Sure, thank you. Move and seconded that a review of the partnership policy and approach to partnering in the context of the overall strategic priorities of the DWWP, sorry for the abbreviation, be done in 2025 to inform future partnering.
Is that clear enough, Director Martman?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. That is fairly broad.
All right. Director Acton?
Thank you. First, I knew my question would insult someone, so excuse me, Director Calhoun, because that is a practice done on another board. So sorry that it offended you there. So I guess I'm wondering if this could also include, because of the lack of follow-up on how the money is being spent and what it's being spent on, I think is really important. So for example, I know in the past, I don't know what the proposal is now with the Shawnigan Basin Society, but I know in the past, they wanted to buy some instrument that cost, it was in the thousands. So let's say $3,500. So for a small group like that to own an instrument like that with the money from this fund, to me, that instrument should belong to the region. So knowing that, certain groups are doing certain things, or if they're allowed to purchase, what are they allowed to do with the money? So if they're allowed to purchase stuff like that, that can be shared, I think, is there a mechanism in place to share those items when it's, just let's say a small test that doesn't repeat itself very often, or whatever. That's just an example. And then, do we allow this fund to pay for staff time or hire people, or so that kind of thing? So can that be included as well in this strategic review, partnership review?
Mr. Moore, is the motion broad enough that it could address the concerns raised by Director Acton?
Through the chair, yeah, I would suggest that perhaps what staff can do is come back with just a little bit of scope of the review, just to make sure that we're capturing the items. I've made notes here just in terms of who qualifies as partners and what sort of accountability and possibly eligible expenses are areas that should be touched upon.
Great, thanks. Does that address your question, Director Acton?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Director Justice, perhaps to close?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to reiterate the point already made that the Quamachin Lake work is being led by the municipality, and this is partly related to an understanding with Rowing Canada that the dangers of the lake to the athletes will be mitigated, as well as all the other reasons why one should work on a badly damaged lake like that. And there isn't consequently a community group that is leading this work, which effectively disqualifies Quamachin Lake from being funded under the Drinking Water and Watershed Protection Program under the current ethos. So I do think a review would be very important to mitigate that problem.
Great, thank you. So we'll now call the question. Yeah. All in favor? And opposed? None opposed, motion carries. We're now left with item 3 here regarding the proposed $8,000 contribution for Quamachin Somenos. Someone like to comment on that? Director Stash?
Director Morrison made a comment that there's policy. I'd like to actually hear the clarity from finance staff on the director saying there's a policy on that this isn't allowed. But why would staff recommend it on in current year unallocated funds being utilized? So some clarification on that, just to the director's point.
Mr. Moore, another member of staff, perhaps want to comment on that? If you could also clarify as well, like I know for our committee of the whole meeting tomorrow, there are a number of enhanced service requests and capital asset items that are drawing upon operating capital reserves. So if you could perhaps explain how that's being approached versus the recommendation here.
So through the chair to the board. So we do not recommend that you look at current surpluses as in the year for large stuff, because what if something between now and the end of the year comes up and you can't cover it and you end up in a deficit, which we hope never happens. But we don't look at current year surpluses. We're always a year behind on looking at surpluses. Surpluses, especially operating surpluses, are for one-time expenses only. We do not recommend that they be used anywhere to be used against ongoing expenses that are going to happen year after year. because then you start drawing it down, or all you're doing is just depleting down your tax requisition, and then the year that it ends, that there's nothing, now you have to jump it right back up. We're seeing that in a regional district in the interior right now. They're gone from always using it, and now this year they're going to be like a 12% increase to bring everything back up because they've depleted their operating reserves. So we are not looking at them for stuff. There are ones that, for tomorrow, I will have an opening report regarding all of this, that they're based on reserves from last year at the end of 2023, nothing for 2024.
Director Estache?
Then I guess I would just ask, if that's current policy, why was it recommended? It's a recommendation from staff, but if it's counter to staff policy, why was it recommended then? That was the formation of my questioning.
And so the chair to Director Ishtash, there might have been an expense line, like has an expense that he can divert from not using that expense this year to using the expense to divert to North Cowichan for this year. So it's a current expense that they're foregoing.
President, Mr. Moore, you want to jump in here? Did you see any risks or concerns with us potentially following through with your recommendation?
Through the chair, the purpose behind the resolution was, looking to use the 2024 funds was because that was a budget that had been approved for the partnership program for 2024, that up until now we hadn't had applications to use that funding. North Cowichan's request initially came in the summer, and then it took quite a while working with staff to sort of get a better understanding of what was being requested and what might align with the program.
Great, thank you. So we have a recommendation. Director Wilson?
Sorry, Chair. Question here with these funds that are left over. How often do you actually go to somebody like, let's say, the Shawnigan Basin Society and say, we got some money left over, do you want to apply for it? Is it communicated to the societies that there is money available?
We didn't make that kind of outreach. This is essentially the first year we've had the partnership program up and running, so that's definitely something that we could consider is at some point during the year looking at the available funds and opportunities and trying to balance, making the best use of the funds that have been committed to that purpose to supporting watershed health in some way over the year versus not wanting to commit everything, in the first month.
Great, yeah, and if you could consider that, letting people know that we do have some funds available, that would be good. Communication, basically.
Director McGonigal?
I'll move it to get it on the floor.
Seconded. Debate? Call the question? Oh, yeah, we'll read it out. So it's that the remainder of the 2024 Drinking Water and Watershed Protection Program partnership funding of $8,000 be added to the, it says 2024 annual contribution to the municipality of North Cowichan. I think we just probably revise that, added to the contribution to North Cowichan. Take out the 2024 annual. That's what we meant to move, right? Director McGonigal?
Absolutely. Thanks for the clarification on my motion.
All right, any debate?
Through the chair, if I could just
Mr. Moore?
clarify, the initial motion was, part two of the recommendation was that essentially $50,000 from 2024 would start going into this. The resolution that was passed was for the partnership to start in 2025. So that leaves actually $58,000 remaining in the 2024 funding.
Director Nicholson.
I don't think it matters where it comes from, which year, because 2024 is over, so the work should happen next year, and 58,000 is what we want to happen, so however you need to say that.
Director Segal.
Just to be clear, not an additional 58,000, just in total. Because I think what Mr. Moore was saying was that there's now an unspent 50,000 in the 2024 budget. Or 58.
Yes, to clarify, the direction that to enter into a partnership agreement for 2025 would probably make it challenging to spend 2024 dollars on that partnership that hasn't started till next year.
Question? So I just want to make sure we're clear. I'm going to go to you in 1 second, Director Acton, but, so you're saying, Mr. Moore, because we're not going to have the partnership in place till starting for next year, it's challenging to allocate the $8,000 from 2024 to North Cowichan for these initiatives?
Yeah, I'd have to look to direction from finance as well if there's any issues with that. The suggestion, initially, we were looking at $50,000 would come from 2024, 2025, and 2026 was the 3 years, and then the remaining 8,000 that's left over in 2024 would also be added to that. The recommendation that's been passed is for the partnership to start with 1 year, 50,000 in 2025. So the thought is is there still $8,000 or a desire to add that in from 2024 funding, and would we have to carry that over, or how would that work?
Sorry, I missed the question. Sorry, I was doing something else. Yeah, so through the chair, so we won't know our year-end balances until closer to the end of January to know what the carryover is. We do work with all departments and budget managers with regards to their budgets, looking at their surpluses, capital reserves, stuff like that. We work with them in January, February to move stuff into those reserves. So we wouldn't know until January to February if there's going to be room for an additional 8,000 next year.
So I guess I'm getting a bit confused here. Like, we're hearing from Mr. Moore that there is this funding is set aside, is not spent, but then you're saying we're not sure.
No, like, so there is in the budget in 2024, 150,000 for this program.
Mm-hmm.
So what Jeff is saying is that there is 50,000 plus an additional 8 out of that program that is not spent. So if you do not spend it, if we do not cut you a check this year, if this is thing, we can roll that forward into next year to cut the same check to be against that. Does that make sense?
But
So
and
that would be this year's reserve, like this year's.
But it
stuff.
won't actually be provided until 2025.
Correct,
Yeah.
unless,
Yeah. So I'm assuming like the motion that we've got on the floor is consistent with that?
yes,
Does that
yes.
provide everyone with some comfort? Director Morrison? All right. Can I call the question then? All in favor? And opposed? Director Morrison, McGonigal opposed. Motion carries. All right. So we can now move on to question period. What's that? All right, there's no one in the gallery. So we can now move to the closed session. So I need a motion that the meeting be closed to the public in accordance with Community Charter, Part 4, Division 3, Section 90, subsections, as noted in accordance with the agenda item. Moved. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Director Segal. All in favor? And opposed? And opposed, motion carries.